United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, an announcement. As we're continuing with these virtual meetings, I'll be making all initial motions, and then I'll ask a planning board member to give a second. Again, please state your name when you give a second. It makes it easier for the secretary to record it. I'll state for the record that this meeting was called to order at 7 p.m. This is the rescheduled meeting of February 1st. Due to inclement weather, we had to reschedule it to tonight on February 8th. So I thank you all for being in attendance. So I want to welcome you to the February 8th meeting of the Town of Dover Planning Board. Today's meeting has been convened in accordance with the Governor's March 13, 2020 Executive Order 202.1, which dispenses certain provisions of the Open Meetings Law to allow the municipal board to convene a meeting via video conference. In accordance with the executive order, the public has been provided with the ability to view the meeting, and a transcript will be provided at a later date. Okay. So next we have on the agenda, we have a public hearing that was scheduled for February 1st, a continuation of public hearing for 43 Mill Street. So I'll make a motion to open this public hearing for 43 Mill Street.
Before we get started with that, Chair,
Yes, Mr. Logan.
I wanted to jump in and say that because of a technicality, when the meeting was canceled last week, the public hearing wasn't scheduled and notified in the way that a public hearing normally is for this week. So we would suggest that the public hearing not be closed tonight, which I didn't anticipate would be the case regardless, and that we formally set it for the next meeting as well. So while the public hearing might not technically be happening tonight, you can certainly take comment and have the applicant present.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. All right, so with that, I'll make a motion to open up 43 Mill Street to public comment. Is there a second?
Second, Tamar.
Seconded by Tamar. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, we didn't do a roll call, right? Secretary, please call the roll.
Member Courtine,
Aye.
Member LaRobidier,
Aye.
Member Roman,
Aye.
Member Williams,
Aye.
Member Morosky,
Oh, he's muted.
Member Villano,
Okay, now say aye.
Aye.
all in favor?
Thank you. All right, so at this time, we'll receive comment on 43 Mill Street. Is there a representative from the applicant who'd like to speak at this time?
Hey, Mr. Chairman Courtine and planning board members. Again, we would we would request to adjourn that public hearing for the neighboring time. We're still waiting on an interpretation letter from the code enforcement officer of the town of Dover about the variances for non-conforming and conforming lots. So again, we would like to adjourn that until next meeting until we could hopefully get that letter.
Okay. Mr. Sander, when you say you want to adjourn the meeting, you mean that you want it to be continued to the next meeting of the
Correct.
planning
Yep.
board, which is March 1st, correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Is there any other comment on 43 Mill Street at this time? Okay, seeing no other comment, I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing and have it again properly noticed for the planning board meeting to take place on March 1st. Is there a second?
Member Williams, second.
Second by Member Williams. All right. The secretary, please call the roll.
Member Corteen,
Aye.
Member LaRobier,
Aye.
Member Romaine,
Aye.
Member Valano, Member Williams,
Aye.
Member Morosky,
Aye. Aye.
Yeah.
thank you.
We have it.
All in favor?
Thank you. All right, so moving on. Under old business, we have the Savarese Dover Furnace Road application. So at this time, we'll have the representative of the applicant present on Savarese Dover Furnace Road.
Hi again, Peter Sander from Rania Engineering. So I'll just go through another brief spiel, kind of giving the description and highlighting the things we submitted last time and moving forward. Savarese Septic is a 9.05 acre site on Old Dover Furnace Road. It is a commercially zoned site. The applicant is proposing a 4,480 square foot steel structure. 4,000 of that space will be dedicated to the contractor yard use, where they'll be used to store equipment, and 480 square feet of that will be used as an office. Included as part of our improvements are an approved SDS that was originally approved as part of the site's former development, a much larger development of contractor yards and warehouse use with over 43,000 square foot of building, much smaller. Also included as part of the proposed improvements is an aggregate storage bin, small parking area for 10 vehicles, stormwater wet detention pond, and a DCDPW driveway. Part of included in our submission last time was a revision to the site plan applications, a comment letter addressing some previous comments, as well as building elevations, kind of outlining the structure, describing the make, the material, and the color of the building. In our comment letter, we had requested that a waiver be provided for us for the seeker narrative, being that this was a major project, and for the long AEF, justifications of which were because the site's previous development was approved by the planning board for a much larger scale of development. And being that there has been no changes to the zoning code since then, we feel that it would have been justifiable that a waiver be provided, given the smaller scale of this project compared to what was previously approved. With that, fairly straightforward, not too much has changed. And we look forward to hearing some board comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sander. So I'll start off and then we'll go through each of the members of the board and then we'll continue with our consultants. So at the end of our discussion, we'll look to entertain a resolution referring the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development. Mr. Sander, you're aware that we need to do that.
Correct. Yep.
Do you have any comment on that in particular?
Nope. Fairly standard practice. We're fully okay with it.
Okay. And then do you or your clients have any sense of your timeline going forward after this referral?
Do you mean in building this structure or getting the project approved with the planning board?
Getting the project approved and then building.
Okay. Yeah, we would like to get it approved as soon as possible, given it's fairly straightforward. We don't really want to see it hold up. Building wise, the building would, the applicants are very, they're pretty excited about the project because it offers them new facilities because right now they're currently renting. This will give them their own place and allow them to have their own use for the site. So they'll most likely be moving forward as soon as the weather clears and the ground is suitable for development at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Sander. We'll go through the members of the Planning Board, Member Roman.
Sorry, you're asking for comments?
Comments if you have them.
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Morosky,
I have no comment right now.
comments or questions, but okay. Thank you, Member Morosky. Member LaRoberdier,
No comments.
thank you, Member LaRoberdier. Member Williams,
No comments.
thank you, Member Williams. Member Villano,
Brian, I think I was mistaken with Member Villano. I thought Michael was Villano, but it is a member of the Harlem Valley Homestead. So Mr. Villano's not here.
oh, okay. Thank you,
You're welcome.
Secretary Van Miller. Okay. And Member Sedor is also not present this evening, correct?
Right,
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll move on to our consultants. Mr. Logan?
No comments at this time. I think you've
Thank you.
summarized the status.
Thank you. And Mr. Werner?
Sure. So I did issue a memo back on January 28th, just kind of closing the loop on some of the comments from the last go around, which I think was December 31st. A lot of the comments on the wetlands, based on feedback with Joe Berger and the applicant, are no longer applicable. So as Peter mentioned in his presentation, we are going to affirm the negative declaration for SECRA moving forward with this one. But we did ask for the short EAF to be submitted, since it is they did change the format of the form since this was approved last time, and they've done that. They also provided some architectural elevations. So I noted in the memo that the board is responsible for reviewing those as the ARB. Otherwise, no further comments. It is going to be referred to the county under 239M. And also in the applicant's cover letter back to me and the board, I think the explanation that was provided in the letter about the special permit narrative, or the justification for the special permit which was within the letter itself, I think is fine. That serves the purpose of explaining why the special permit is required here. Main justification is that it was already approved for one, even though it was a larger project. This is a smaller project. It did go through a full SECRA review, and there were no issues at that time, and it's carrying over now. So I believe we have a resolution for referral to the county. And Patrick, should we wait until that 30 days is up to set a public hearing, or is it fine to set a public hearing also?
You can set a public hearing.
Okay. Yeah, so that was my recommendation, was to just get that referral out, and I think we're ready to set a public hearing for March 1st.
We would want to make that a separate motion from this resolution, correct? Mr. Logan?
Yes.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Warner?
No, that's all.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Mr. Berger?
Yeah, I've reviewed everything submitted, and I have no comments. Everything is acceptable as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. All right, having heard from our consultants, do any members of the planning board have any other questions or comments to add at this time? Okay, not hearing any. We'll move on to the resolution. A resolution referring the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for Plum Hills / Savarese Family Farm Site Plan. Whereas the applicant, Savarese Family Farm Inc. has submitted an application for site plan, special use permit, and architectural review board approvals to construct approximately 4,480 square foot structure containing an office and a storage area for an excavation and septic pumping company, also known as The Project, at property located on Dover Furnace Road, identified as tax parcel 7061-00-369979, also known as The Property, in the CO zoning district and floodplain and stream corridor overlay districts. And whereas the project is depicted on a site plan entitled Savary's Family Farm, Inc., prepared by Rennie Engineering Design, PLLC, dated October 26, 2020, last revised January 13, 2021, and building elevations entitled Savary's Farm Family, Inc., new utility barn, prepared by Rennie Engineering Design, PLLC, dated January 13, 2021, also known as the site plan set. And whereas service businesses not listed elsewhere in the Town of Dover schedule of land use regulations are permitted in the CO district subject to special permit. And whereas the property is located within 500 feet of Dutchess County Route 26, and whereas pursuant to section 239M of the General Municipal Law, projects located within 500 feet of a county highway must be referred to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for a report and recommendation thereon. And whereas an erosion sediment control permit was issued for a prior iteration of the project, and the work under the permit has been completed with no further grading or site disturbance work proposed. Now therefore be resolved that the planning board hereby directs its secretary to refer the site plan to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development pursuant to section 239M of the General Municipal Law. This resolution is being offered by myself, seconded by
So moved.
seconded by member Morosky. All right, is there any discussion on this resolution? Okay, hearing no discussion on this resolution, I'll ask the secretary to please call the roll.
Member Corteen,
Aye.
Member LaRobodiere,
Aye.
Member Borowski,
Aye.
Member Roman,
Aye.
Member Williams,
Aye.
all in favor.
Thank you. All right. I believe that's all we have for this evening for Savary Stover Furnace Road.
Public hearing.
All right. Very nice, everyone.
Oh, wait,
Thank you so much.
we're just gonna,
Public
well,
hearing.
we'll set the public hearing.
Oh, okay, yep.
So I'll make a motion to set a public hearing for Savary Stover Furnace Road, also known as the Plum Hill Savary's Family Farm Site Plan, for our next meeting, which will be Monday, March 1st at Dover Town Hall at 7 p.m. Motion made by myself, seconded by
Second, member Roman.
member Roman. Any discussion on setting this public hearing? Seeing no discussion, if the secretary could please call the roll.
Member Corteen,
Aye.
Member LaRobodiere,
Aye.
Member Borowski,
Aye.
Member Roman,
Aye.
Member Williams,
Aye.
all in favor.
Thank you. All right. So again, thank you, Mr. Sander.
Thank you very much, everyone. I look forward to seeing you guys on March 1st and have fun with the snowstorm coming.
Very
Thank you.
funny.
See you guys later.
Goodbye. All right, now we'll move on to Harlem Valley Homestead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Gallagher. I'm with Insight Engineering, Surveying, and Landscape Architecture. I'm joined by the applicants, Josh Viertel and Michael Armilio, as well as Neil Alexander from Cutting Fader, the project's land use attorney. We were asked to be here tonight to give a status update as well as receive any initial feedback for three main items. And those are the noise study discussions that have occurred since our last meeting between Harlem Valley Homestead consultant teams, as well as with AKRF and Joseph Berger. Secondly, to review the photographic visual study that was requested by the planning board the last time that we were here at our last meeting. And to give an overview of the virtual meeting that also occurred between Creighton Manning, the project's traffic engineer, and New York State DOT. Procedurally, the planning board, status-wise, they circulated notice of their intent to serve as lead agency and requested comments from interested and involved agencies by today, February 8th. If there were no letters of objections that were received, we do respectfully request that the planning board declare itself lead agency at tonight's meeting. All of the supporting documents that we'll be talking about and reviewing tonight will be formally submitted with our next submission, which will be this week for the March 1st meeting. But a digital version was submitted last week just in support of this discussion. So the planning board had the opportunity to review the materials before we discussed it tonight. As it relates to noise, a meeting was held between VHB, who prepared the noise study, and AKRF on January 15th to review the noise study comments generated by AKRF in the last memo. As part of VHB's next submission, additional information related to noise associated with traffic and with construction, as discussed in that meeting, will be included. We do plan to submit that with this week's submission. There was also an additional meeting held between Joseph Berger and VHB related to sound mitigation on January 26th. Mr. Berger went through the town's concerns as it relates to noise. Although the noise study shows that the sound generated from the site does comply with the town of Dover zoning code, the concern was in an instance where an adjoining property owner called the town to report a noise complaint. The town would like a procedural document outlining the ways Harlem Valley Homestead would mitigate that complaint. Mr. Berger requested that a draft noise complaint procedure be created for the planning board review with a final document submitted prior to a certificate of occupancy. Items included would be a contact person, a list of mitigation measures addressing potential everyday events as well as special events. This document is being prepared and will be submitted in a subsequent submission. Before I move on to a discussion of views, is there any questions about the noise conversations and discussions that have been had?
Thank you, Ms. Gallagher. I don't have anything at this time regarding the noise study, but we'll go through the membership of the board. Member Morosky, anything regarding noise study?
No, I have no comment right now.
Thank you, Member Morosky. Member LaRobediere?
No comments.
Thank you. Member Roman?
No, no comment.
Thank you, Member Roman. Member Williams?
No comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Williams. Mr. Logan, with respect to the noise study, anything at this time?
Nothing right now.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. Mr. Werner?
Not right now. I'm gonna look to see what comes back with the next submission based on the meeting that we had with VHB and Insight on the comments that we issued last time. Like Kathleen mentioned, those are really getting at traffic and construction noise concerns, mainly for the SECRO discussions. Joe's comments are more about the operational side and how to address things as they come up and having a protocol in place, which I think is a great idea. Then I'll let him speak a little bit more on that if he wants to. But that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Werner. Mr. Berger?
Yeah, as soon as we get a draft of what mitigation measures and procedure, want the plan submit to the planning board for planning board's review. Maybe we even refer it over to the town board for their comment, review on it, since the town's this is something will provide a procedure for during application, during when the project's working, and our residents hear a sound that they don't like or think it's a problem. What are the procedures to report it? Who does it get reported to? And how does the town, through the code enforcement in our office, how do we react to it and get the acceptable reaction? So I think that's important to have it ironed out and have it reviewed by everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Having heard the comments of our consultants, any member of the planning board have any further comment or question at this time regarding noise study? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Ms. Gallagher, did you have anything further you wanted to say in your introduction?
Yeah, I would like to move on to the views, and I'm going to share my screen, if that is acceptable. Wonderful. So I'm doing a double screen. So I'll try to zoom in on the pictures that are most of interest, but to frame the views, I would like to talk about both our first sheet as well as our individual pictures. A visual study was conducted for 26 locations around the perimeter of Harlem Valley Homestead. So to orient ourselves, this is our site, Route 55, Dogtail Corner Road, in Old Forge Road. Pictures were taken at publicly accessible locations, including 3 locations along the Appalachian Trail. Photos were chosen to show the viewpoints that have the highest potential of visibility for the proposed development. The pictures will show that the view to Harlem Valley Homestead is blocked by topography or screened by vegetation at locations, really kind of substantiating the previously submitted viewshed cross sections that we reviewed at the last planning board meeting. The 3 locations we'd like to get into a little more detail at tonight's meeting are 14, which is north of the site from Dogtail Corner, 24, which is east of the site on Appalachian Trail, and 26, which is the overlook of the Appalachian Trail to the north. 14 and 24 will exhibit views to the site where you can see pastures. The areas that you can see are not going to be able to be developed, or not proposed to be developed, but the pastures will still continue to be able to be seen as they currently are. And then 26 is a little more in depth of the overlook. I'm going to quickly, briefly flip through the pictures here on the other side. Photo 1 starts at Dogtail Corner. We move north throughout the site, and then 17 is where we come back down to the intersection. But as we can see from these photos, the majority of the site is again either blocked by topography or screened by vegetation. As we continue up Dogtail Corner, we are taking these from the road or publicly accessible areas, but we are able to see how the screening is continuing in a leaf-off condition, so the most potentially conservative condition, still screening the views from these areas. When we get a little further up to 14, we are able to see a little bit of the pasture from 14 to the view, but the proposed development is all at this lower elevation, which again is blocked by topography and screened by vegetation. 15 and 16 rounds off Dogtail Corner, and then we jump back down to 17. We took these locations near driveways to the existing entrances. However, again, all of our locations were adjusted to make sure that we were showing the potentially most impactful view. When we jump up to 22, 23, and 21, that's where we are further from the site. 24 is the second location we wanted to go into a little more detail. Again, in a leaf-off condition, you're able to see part of the pasture, which is really these higher sections of Harlem Valley Homestead. There is proposed development that is lower within these sites, but again, you can see even when this outlook is cleared partially so that it expands, so that the view is expanded, we're still not able to see the proposed development area, which is located on the lower portion of the site. And picture 25 is another locations on the Appalachian Trail, which is blocked completely by topography. 26 is the overlook, and I'm going to make this larger so we can zoom in a little bit. This is the location of the overlook. The area has been thinned so that you're able to see this expansive view from the mountain. You're able to see our development, proposed development, which is 1.5 miles away. So what you're seeing is what a hiker would see as they're looking out over the view. Yes, you can see several structures throughout Harlem Valley Homestead. You can see several structures throughout the valley, but it's only as part of a larger expansive view. If we really zoom into the area, that's when you're able to see a little more of the development. And what we did, we enlarged that view, which is really something you would see if you had your camera and were zooming in with a camera, or you had your binoculars. At that point, you would be able to see some of the proposed building for agricultural purposes, the farm hub, and some of the cabins that are located at the top of this hill. The large areas of greenery that you can see are really these locations where the pastures are continued to be able to be maintained and to be used for agricultural purposes. All of the buildings in this area, have been reviewed for architectural compatibility by SHPO and have been designated to have a no adverse impact. The architecture team is putting together a package to exemplify the materials and colors to be compatible with the surrounding architecture, and that will be submitted in subsequent submission. Are there any questions about the views from the planning board?
Thank you, Ms. Gallagher. So to be clear, when were these photos taken?
So the majority of the photos were taken January of this year. We were not able to hike up to the overlook in January. We basically did it right before the big snowstorm. We had a break in the weather and tried to grab as many pictures as we could. And then by the time we, had the opportunity to really take the 2-hour hike up there, unfortunately, the snow had been down at this point. So this is a picture that was taken in May of last year. So it is a little bit of the leaf off condition. It's a little bit of the leaf on condition. It's not the complete leaf off condition that we have in other areas, but we still believe is a good example of the amount of the proposed development that you'll be able to see. And basically what you can see now is what you're going to be able to see in the future. The extent of the buildings that you see is really the extent of the buildings you'll be able to see after development as well.
It appears as though most of the close vegetation has either no leaves at this time or just has no leaves. Is that?
In this front area, I've seen many pictures throughout the season, and I think this is just the typical condition of that area. I'm not quite sure if it blooms at all, to your point. I haven't actually seen it completely bloom, but it does look like maybe some of these in another portion of the season may have a little more to it, but I don't think it's going to be much more than what you see.
Thank you. And could you go to pictures 21 and 22, please?
Absolutely. So again, we're only able to take our pictures from publicly accessible areas, but there is a substantial amount of topography. We're about 2,725 feet from the proposed development, so a little more than a half a mile. And same thing for 22. We're looking southwest on Old Forge Road because we do have to take it from the road, and we're about 1,800 linear feet from the proposed development.
Thank you. All right, we'll go through the rest of the members. Member Williams, any comments or questions regarding the photos at this time?
No comments or questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank
Member
you.
Williams. Member Roman?
No comments, no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Member LaRobediere?
No comment.
Member Morosky?
No comments or questions at this time.
Thank you, Member Morosky. Move on to Mr. Werner.
Sure. Kathleen, I had a couple of thoughts on this as I was looking at it. Would it be possible to, on some of these photos, even though we're not seeing anything on a lot of them, is it possible to add an arrow or just like some kind of call out of approximately where the site would be within the photo, even if it's blocked? Is that possible?
It is possible. We can review
Like
that option.
approximate, you can say approximate location of project blocked by trees or something. Just because, where within the photograph should we be looking to know where the site is? And then.
Yeah.
Gallagher, this is Chairman Courtine. It appears from the image you're showing now that you have arrowheads pointing towards roughly the center of your project. So is it that the photos themselves or the center of the photo is pointed towards the project?
So the majority of the pictures are taken towards the main project development, which is this area in the farm court, with the exception of basically 6, 7, and 8, which we directed towards the cabin locations because we felt that was the most potentially impactful development for those specific views. But the majority of the rest of the sites is either going towards the main development or going towards the cabin if we thought that was the view that would be impacted.
And whomever was taking the photos, how did they know they were, I mean, it might seem like a silly question, but how did they know they were facing the best direction to be pointing towards the center of your site?
Absolutely. We're pretty, and we've been working on this project for quite some time. We have hiked this site pretty significantly and are pretty familiar with directionally the areas that we are and our cardinal directions and where we're going. So we're very confident that the directional arrows that you see on the photos are accurate to the pictures being taken.
Thank you, Ms. Gallagher.
My
Mr.
question
Warner,
was if,
please
yeah,
continue.
so within like the actual photo, like for example, 14, I'm looking at right now, 13 and 14, if within that view, if you can just maybe just with a dot and like a call out of approximately where the site is, even though it's blocked by a tree, even if the dot ends up on a tree trunk, like this is where the site is. Does that make sense?
It does. And we could do our best.
Yeah,
My fear
approximately
is
fine.
that because the view is so blocked and screened, it is difficult to kind of orient ourselves because the screening is so intense, is so solid, is so opaque in those areas. So we could give you our best of intentions of where we think it's going to be, but it is difficult to do when you're looking at a screen of trees that you don't really have landmarks to orient yourself to.
Okay. Just a thought to have it, approximate location of site, even if it's very like a blob or, dashed boundary of some kind. That works too. I was just wondering if it would be at all possible. And then looking at 26, the one that was where you had the structures actually shown. I'm zooming in on that one. I have it on my own screen here. So where the cabins are, I guess first of all, was this created with some, kind of a CAD assistance, or were you able to scale the heights accurately enough to, to make them as realistic as possible from this view?
So it's a little blurry on this screen as well as with these images because the images get slightly reduced in order to email and to be shown on a screen resolution, which is only 75
Right.
resolution. But you can see the existing wash pack, which is an agricultural building that is on site that was conducted. And that actually gives you a really good scale as to the height and width of buildings for this area. So the 3 buildings to the right of that are actually the exact same dimensions as that existing building. And then you're really kind of able to build off of there. If you're looking at a higher resolution picture, you can see the farmhouse a little more intensely. But yeah, we had enough when we zoomed in enough landmarks to really gauge our height and our width to be able to accurately show the size of the proposed buildings.
Okay. And on the cabins, those are how tall? Approximately?
I mean, they're only 1 story. They're small cabins. I don't know the exact height, but I could find out that off the top of my head, but I could find out that exact information.
Okay. Now, there are also a set of cabins that's more lower in the image than these are, which would be, I guess, more north if you're looking at a site plan, but they're blocked by trees. Is that what this is kind of showing?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Ms. Gallagher, looking at this image, just to give some orientation, it appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that so the 10 Mile River would be, I guess, coming towards us where the leftmost cabin would be, and then going to the right in the image, and then sweeping around and then back to the left along the bottom of that image.
So basically, the cabins are overlooking the 10 mile.
Right.
So if you can imagine kind of
The 10 mile is
hill-
past those cabins.
Yep. So if you can imagine the hill going down, you really have the 10 mile that's coming here amongst the cabins and making the turn along Old Forge Road. It parallels Old Forge Road for a good chunk of the Old Forge Road. And then eventually Old Forge Road kind of veers to the left and the 10 mile veers to the right. And then when you're going up north, it's really coming around and it circles back kind of below us on the view further down the mountain.
Below, okay, below the view.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Werner?
Not on the visuals for now. I think if they're working on the architectural updates too to get the color scheme, I think that will definitely help the board understand how they're attempting to blend it in with the surroundings as much as possible. I did have a comment on, we did get a letter from DEC on the secret circulation. Maybe we can touch on that as the last item after
Yes, we'll get
Kathleen
to
talks
that.
about the DOT meeting.
Yes, we'll get to the lead agency. Okay, thank you, Mr. Werner. Mr. Berger?
Yeah, no comments on the pictures.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Berger. And Mr. Logan?
I would just say that I agree that having more information on colors and elevations would certainly help this, as Aaron said. Otherwise, no comment.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. All right, having heard the comments and questions of the consultants, are there any members of the planning board who have any further comments or questions at this time? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to traffic. Ms. Gallagher, there's a meeting with the DOT regarding traffic. If you or one of your colleagues would like to speak to that.
Yes. A call was conducted with DOT and Creighton Manning, who's the traffic engineer, the applicant, as well as other representatives from the applicant team, as well as several representatives from the town of Dover, many of which are here tonight on January 27th. Creighton Manning gave an overview of the project, a summary of the traffic study research. As previously mentioned in our discussions here, the project will not exceed 100 trips during the peak hour. However, the traffic study does recommend that some mitigation would be needed at the intersection of Old Forge Road and Route 55. And those were the plans that we reviewed of the intersection at the last planning board meeting. As we've discussed, the existing intersection is really a T with a spur that creates an additional intersection at Route 55. The goal of Creighton Manning's plans has always been to consolidate those intersections and close off the easterly leg of the spur. The existing Old Forge Road T then gets realigned, so it's at a 90-degree angle. And additional site distance improvements are proposed to support this alignment, which would include clearing for site vegetation. And this material was submitted to DOT and re-emphasized at the meeting. The DOT agreed that the overall concept was agreeable. They did, however, request that Creighton Manning evaluate the potential of a left turn lane, that they provide a survey with the property lines at the intersection of Route 55 and Old Forge Road. They also requested that they provide a speed study and prepare a recommendation to submit to DOT as part of the requested reduction for the speed limit on Old Forge Road. We are aware that prior to submitting anything to the DOT for the reduction of the speed limit, we will coordinate with the town board to discuss just procedurally how to have the town board review, approve, and agree to the reduction of the speed limit prior to anything being sent to DOT.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gallagher. The idea of a left turn lane coming up, I think, how would you describe the applicant or consultant's reaction to the idea of having to create a left turn lane on 55?
We've been asked to evaluate the potential of a left turn lane. We are in the process of doing so. and we'll go back to DOT for additional conversation about that. But the applicant has been committed to offsite improvements since the beginning of this project, including the realignment of Route 55 and Old Forge Road, which was prepared for the DOT. They're also committed to improvements along Old Forge Road. They've heard concerns from the highway superintendent for improvements along Old Forge Road, including some replacement of some culverts around those areas, all of which we're currently studying. There are no left turn lanes within the vicinity of this intersection, which is why it just had not been proposed up to this point. But we are committed to doing a study on that potential, and we will keep the planning board up to date on the status of that conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Gallagher. My understanding is that left turn lane is something that needs to be created due to the number of vehicles that is being proposed by the project, correct?
That is one thing that we are evaluating, that Creighton Manning is really evaluating where that threshold lies. There was also some review of some other AASHTO standards that the DOT was referring to. So as part of this study, that's what we're really doing, is what's that threshold? And do we think that because of that threshold, this is an applicable situation to have a left turn lane?
I'm sorry, could you just repeat that last sentence that you said?
We're just looking to review if, based on, you know, the items that you're talking about, we're really looking at those studies and those standards to see if this is an applicable location for a left
to see if
turn
it's applicable. I see. Okay. Do you have a image of the Route 55 Old Forge Road intersection that you could share with the planning board at this time?
to.
Okay, thank you. So how have the, I guess two parts to this. How have the discussions gone with the Dover Highway Superintendent with regard to reworking this intersection?
From my recollection, the concern was more around Old Forge Road and the farm core as it relates to Old Forge Road. Jason had seen this intersection alignment and didn't take any objection or have any additional requests for this area.
Thank you. And have you had any kind of conversation with the owner of that first house on Old Forge Road, for which this proposal would create an additional length of driveway for them?
Are you talking about this property owner? I did not personally. The owner, one of the applicants, Josh Vertel, has had some conversations with this just to make sure that they've been up to date on what was being submitted to the planning board in relation to this area. And we've been taking any comments that they've had into consideration. But my understanding up to this point is there is no objection to the realignment of this area
By the owner of the...
by the owner of this property.
Is anyone else on your team that'd like to speak on this at this time?
I would just say I've talked to Amir and Lisa and Lily, who are the owners there, and I don't want to speak for them just because I think they should have a chance to. And I would say we have a good relationship with them and the project, and there are pros to this change, including not having cars drive along right in front of their house from 55 to enter, and not right in front of their house to exit. So it gives them increased privacy and also increased safety as they're backing out of their driveway. And then there's, so there's an upside is more privacy, and they want to ensure that people don't accidentally drive into their driveway on the way out. We think that there's really easy solutions for how to do that. But I feel like I should let them speak to, we'll have public comment and let them speak to any concerns they have. And also I think that I feel pretty confident in saying that they know that they can just ring us up anytime and we can walk and talk and look at drawings. We have a pretty solid open line of communication about that stuff. And if they need to, can also, of course, submit comments publicly about it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Viertel. And just again, my understanding of this is that the first turnoff for the driveway is to their house and the second turnoff is to a field. Is that correct?
To a
If you're
field,
going
and I think
from
there's a-
Old Forge Road towards the house, the first is to the house, the second.
Yep, to the house. And my second understanding is there's a barn in that area.
A
as well.
barn. Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Gallagher. Okay, we'll look for any comments or questions from members of the planning board. Member Lorberdier,
Not at this time, thank you.
thank you. Member Morosky,
Yes, Ryan, I do have a comment. That spur to the right that goes to the house, is that going to be the town road where it will be maintained or plowed by the town? Or does that become a private access?
or does it become reclaimed, just natural? I guess.
So this
extending your
area
question.
right here will be vegetated. So the gravel will be removed so that there's no accidental access. You know, habits are difficult to create new ones. So one of the best ways to do that is to change material. So this area will be changed from gravel to lawn.
Is that true of all of your cross hatching that's on the image we're seeing now? It'll all be
Yeah,
reclaimed and all be vegetated?
We'll rehabilitate this area. And obviously site distance is a really important issue. So it'll just be with, at the moment, the intention is just for it to be lawn, but that's something that we can work out with the DOT.
Member Morosky, if you'd like to continue.
Yeah, I was just wondering from a plowing standpoint, so the town is going to plow this little spur or leg to the right as part of, and maintain it with gravel or blacktop as part of Old Forge Road?
That was an item that was also brought up in the meeting with the DOT. I believe Joseph Berger had brought that up. DOT has asked for a survey of this area so they can get a more clearer picture of where the property line is at this right of way. And they said after that, they'll discuss kind of what happens to the ownership of this area.
Joe Berger, if I could also
Yes,
jump
please.
in. If it turns out that it's in the DOT right away, then the DOT will decide whether it's a DOT or private drive. That's within their privy. If it turns out that's in the town right away, then the highway superintendent has expressed a concern that be turned over to the property owners as a driveway, as the town does not want to maintain it.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Okay, anything else, Member Morosky?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Member Williams?
No comments at this time.
Thank you, Member Williams. Member Roman?
Just remembering what I had read in the traffic study, I believe there was discussion of potentially, and this was covered a few minutes ago, potentially having a left turn lane on Route 55. But the question about potentially reducing the speed limit, am I right that that referred only to Old Forge Road and not to 55?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I wanted to clear up. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Roman. Mr. Berger,
Basically,
comments or questions?
yeah, basically, my comments I just expressed on the portion of Old Forge. Also, the applicant is presenting information, and we're still working with them on the portion of Old Forge Road, which may be improved. The condition of that road, whether it's in fee to the town or whether it's a user road, which would require additional information. So that some information has been presented to the town to review. It's currently being reviewed by myself as well as the town attorney. And if we need more information, I'm sure the applicant will be willing to give it to us. Right now, there's been no determination by the town whether Old Forge Road is a fee simple owned or whether it's a user road, which would determine how improvements along Old Forge would be made.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Just could you help educate the planning board and the public as to why this intersection would need a left turn lane, whereas far busier intersections such as Dogtail Corners on the same road, the DOT is not saying needs a left turn lane?
Well, if this is a new improvement and all the previous intersections were done under old ASHTO standards, ASHTO has come out with a new standard recently, which changes a lot of the parameters.
Okay.
Oh, you still hear me? Okay, good.
Yeah, I just lost you there for 2 seconds.
Oh, yeah, the Wi-Fi went out for a second.
Sure.
So basically, the new ASHTO standards has different parameters that are implemented to require a left turn lane, and the DOT wants the applicant to look at the new ASHTO standards in relation to this intersection, and that's why all the other ones in the remote area were done many years ago under different standards.
I see. And if you can, don't mean to put you on the spot, not a big fan of acronyms. Can you just explain what ASHTO is for everyone?
American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials.
Thank you. And so something similar, I guess, to this would be if someone on Dover, if someone was to create a project on Dogtail Corners Road, that would create 100 turns in an hour at Dogtail Corners in 55. The DOT would be applying the same standard to them.
Yes.
At that intersection.
Yes, the standard includes not only the amount of cars, but the sight distance and the geometry of the intersection as well.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Mr. Logan, did you have anything else, Mr. Berger?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Logan?
Nothing other than to comment that yes, there are several legal questions that are going to be dealt with once we know more about title.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. Mr. Warner?
Sure. Just to add on to what Joe mentioned and what Kathleen was presenting, number 5 from the minutes kind of gets to that, the idea there from Insight's minutes. So I think, I'm not sure if the folks that we were on the phone with on this call will be reviewing the traffic impact study, or if that's a different department at over at DOT. I know they have it as part of the SECRO circulation that was done. But according to the folks on the phone, they weren't concerned about the level of service at this intersection. Like we've been saying, it's the ASHTO standard. It's new that they want applied here. So they weren't concerned about the actual trip generation. That didn't really warrant the turn lane. It was more of sight distance and ASHTO issues.
Thank you.
But again, we might get comments. We're still waiting on actual technical comments on the traffic impact study to see if they agree with all those conclusions.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. All right. Having heard from our consultants, is there any other comments or questions from any planning board members at this time regarding the traffic? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Gallagher?
That concludes our technical review of those 3 items for discussion. We're happy to answer any other additional questions about the project.
Thank you. You brought up a question regarding lead agency. So, Mr. Logan, I just have a question for you. Agencies who are interested in possibly being lead agency, did they need to submit a reply dated today, or did it have to be received by the town by today?
I believe the phrasing is that it needs to be, I don't believe the phrase is delivered, and I believe that when it goes, I just want to make sure I'm getting this. I believe the phrasing is that it needs to be transmitted, but not necessarily delivered.
All right.
People have said means it goes out within 30 days, not necessarily delivered.
So my concern would be that if someone transmitted something today that was received by the town tomorrow or Wednesday or sometime later this week that says, hey, we'd like to be lead agency also, then we might have a problem with the Dover Planning Board declaring lead agency this evening.
Yes.
Or affirming our lead agency.
even if it were ambiguous, it would probably be best practice to consult with that agency and determine who you believe should be lead, even informally.
Okay. Do you see any hindrance to the project if the final determination of lead agency is held off until the March 1st meeting?
I do not.
So, hey, Patrick, it's Neil
Neil, do
Alexander.
you want to comment?
We're both scrambling
ahead.
to look at the regs. I don't think that's what the regs actually say.
All right.
It doesn't matter to us that it's not a big deal, but I think I pulled it up. You can take a look as well. I was fast.
While you're both looking it up, my concern is out of just an abundance of caution that the planning board does not get
and-
itself into some
And
situation.
We're not really being positional about it. I just wanted to say, I don't think that's exactly the language. A lead agency must be agreed upon within 30 calendar days of the date the EAF was transmitted.
Okay, yeah, so the phrase transmitted is talking about when the EAF was sent out, not necessarily when it was delivered to the
Correct.
other involved agency. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, no, I like I said, it's my take on it, and then I'm being a wonky lawyer at this point. It's not really material whether it happens now or back on March 1st, but I think the board is well within its rights since end of business today was 30 days to do it tonight. But if not, we'll gladly, it's one step in the iterative process, right? So it doesn't matter to us.
Mr. Alexander, you're saying it doesn't matter to you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Logan, anything further we need to discuss with respect to lead agency this evening, in your opinion?
Not that I believe.
Okay.
We did get a letter or an email from DEC last week that had no objections to the town to the planning board being a lead agency, but they had a few comments on the submission. So I would suggest that I think the applicant received those already, and if you're going to go ahead and maybe just do an itemized response to that, some of these aren't applicable. Obviously, SHPO, you've got an approval already. They just might not have saw that in the file. But there are some comments in there about the species report. I think they might want to maybe get a copy of the full report if it wasn't in there, or just have Ecological Solutions or consultant have a response to each one of these. Yeah, I think an overall response to each one of these would be fine to give to the board also.
And if we could just coordinate online, I would like to know exactly what they received, because I think a lot of this is going to be answered in maybe some additional studies that maybe wasn't included because it was a little detail oriented in the circulation.
Yeah, so what they did get the EAF and everything that you provided with in your environmental reports directory, which might have been just executive summaries of some stuff, but full reports of others.
Okay.
So, we could take a look and we could talk offline about what exactly was in there, but since we're still moving along in the process, and I think a response to them just to kind of put some of these to bed would help.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I have nothing further this evening with respect to lead agency. Does any member of the planning board wish to speak with respect to lead agency? Hearing none, any other consultant wish to speak with respect to lead agency? All right, I anticipate that we will look to come to the conclusion that the planning board will be lead agency, but we'll do that at the March 1st meeting. We'll go through the consultants to see if there's anything further we need to discuss at this time with respect to HVH. Mr. Werner?
Just a question for the team. You're planning to submit this week, which is, I think the deadline for the meeting is the 10th. Is that still the case? Okay, because with the weather issue last week, and we did have a few comments on the visuals tonight, but that's not going to set you back, that you need extra time?
No, and I think technically you're voting on a new You might be
Yeah.
voting on a new submission deadline that actually pushes that deadline to the 12th of this week.
Yes, we haven't voted on that yet, but that is what is proposed.
That's
so.
true. Okay.
So with that anticipation, we'll actually probably submit on the 11th, but yes, we'll submit this week.
Nothing else for me for now.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Mr. Berger?
Nothing.
Berger, Mr. Logan?
Nothing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Logan. Ms. Gallagher or anyone else from HVH, anything further at this time?
I don't believe so. We thank the board very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. Thank you. All right, so now we have on the agenda updated 2021 deadline and meeting schedule. Speaking with the consultants, they were agreeable to having the submission deadline pushed from the Wednesdays that they currently are to 2 days later on a Friday. We want to try and find that balance whereby the applicants have sufficient time to submit materials to the planning board members and the consultants, but then also we as members and the consultants have sufficient time to review those before the meeting. So they felt that pushing it to 2 p.m. on a Friday that is approximately 2 weeks before our meetings would be still sufficient enough time, for proper review. All of you should have received the proposed change in the deadlines. The two things that just need to be adjusted. It depends on, I guess which version of the document you have. That for the first meeting of October, the deadline would be September 17th. I think some versions had September 10th, so it'll be September 17th. And then additionally, adding in a sentence just to be clear as to whether an applicant meets the deadline or not, a sentence that reads, to meet this deadline, submissions must be made to the landuse@doverny.us email address. That way there's...
Everybody see that? I just wanted to pull it up just in case no one.
Thank you. So that should read September 17th. Next to where it says October 4th, 2021, a few lines down, Mr. Warner. That should read as September 17th.
Got it.
Yep. And then adding the sentence in the second paragraph of the document. So if you could scroll up. At the end of where it says 2 p.m. on deadline dates listed below, adding the sentence, to meet this deadline, submissions must be made to the landuse@doverny.us email address. Because otherwise, how would, there could be some disagreement as to whether someone met a deadline or not based on, well, it was in the mail or the town clerk needed to stamp it by a particular time. So that sentence is also part of the document now. So I'll read the entirety of the document. I won't read all the dates, but I'll read the top part of the document, and then we'll have a discussion, and then we'll have a vote. So the following is a list of the Town of Dover Planning Board deadlines and meetings. This schedule was created by use of the guidelines the Planning Board has in place. The schedule can be changed only at a formal Planning Board meeting by way of a motion being made and a vote of the membership on record. The Planning Board meetings are scheduled for the first and third Monday of each month at 7 p.m. at the Town Hall. There's a double asterisk at the bottom that brings you to the bottom, which says pending COVID considerations. And the deadline for any and all submissions is before 2 p.m. on the deadline dates listed below. And now the additional sentence, to meet this deadline, submissions must be made to the landuse@doverny.us email address. And so again, you can see the meeting dates and then the deadlines. So obviously this is going forward, that starting with the March 1st, 2021 meeting, you should see that all the deadlines take place on a Friday, again, about 2 weeks, a little more than 2 weeks before the meeting. All right, so I'll make a motion that we accept this new deadline schedule. Is there a second?
Second, Member Roman.
Second by Member Rahman. Any discussion? Now would be the time to speak. Okay, hearing no discussion. If the secretary could please call the roll.
Member Corteen,
Aye.
Member LaRobertier,
Aye.
Member Morosky,
Aye.
Member Roman,
Aye.
Member Williams,
Aye.
all in favor?
Thank you. All right, so the deadline for submissions for our March 1st meeting will be Friday, February 12th. And at this time, we are still anticipating having a meeting on March 15th with a deadline for February 26th. Okay, next we'll move on to approval of the minutes from our January 4th, 2021 meeting. I'll make a motion to approve of the minutes. Is there a second?
Second, Williams.
Seconded by Member Williams. Discussion regarding the minutes? Okay, hearing no discussion. If the secretary please call the roll.
Member Corteen,
Aye.
Member LaRobertier,
Aye.
Member Morosky,
Aye.
Member Roman,
Aye.
Member Williams,
Aye.
all in favor?
Thank you. All right. So just before we adjourn, we will be having I'll be having a meeting with the consultants, a monthly meeting, just to go over what should be coming up next at our next meeting. Those meetings take place sometime after the February 12th deadline and obviously before the March 1st meeting. It'll likely be next week. Given that the planning board is a 7-member board, 2 or 3 of us can meet with the consultants, and that's not a violation of the open meetings law. So I'll put out when the meeting will take place with the consultants. And then if any 1 or 2 of you would like to join in, it'll be a virtual meeting like this. So it's not as though you have to be at Dover Town Hall. But if any 1 or 2 of you would like to join in, because you're available, I would appreciate you joining in. I think it's better if more of us are part of the process. So with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second, Member Roman.
Second, Member Rahman, thank you. The secretary, please call the roll.
Member Corteen,
Aye.
Member LaRobertier,
Aye.
Member Morosky,
Aye.
Member Roman,
Aye.
Member Williams,
Aye.
all in favor?
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. I'll see you again on March 1st. Thank you.
Thank you.